celebrating 48 years on the air. Award-winning Farmweek is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, we begin a special report in the Mississippi Delta, a precious balancing act. In Southern Gardening, a double feature, angel face and a whole lot of moss cloths. Plus, an encore, what makes wheat so special? Zach says, let's bake a deal. And back on our special report, turns out a flood can actually be a good thing. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello everyone, I'm Zach Ashmore.
And I'm Mike Russell. Great to have you with us again here on Farm Week. This week we begin a very special Farm Week report, all about a precious balancing act in the Mississippi Delta. This report is born out of a collaborative research project years in the making, and ultimately looks at how a relatively simple change in ag practices could reap huge benefits to farmers, wildlife, and the environment. We begin, as you might expect, with the big picture.
Historically, there have been times when farms and conservation have been at odds.
As humans, we have almost doubled the amount of nitrogen available to the globe.
When it rains, just by the nature of there being more fertilizer on the landscape, the rain can transport that to aquatic systems.
If I can keep my soil in Sunflower County and not send it down to New Orleans, everybody's happier.
Hello, I'm Mike Russell. Welcome to this Farm Week special report. Land in the Mississippi Delta is known for its fertile soil, supplying the nation with food and other agricultural resources. Modern farming practices have graded and fertilized land to precision, creating a perfect mix of soil conditions for growing. But when these soil nutrients escape the land on which they were placed, they can wreak havoc with the environment. In 2018, more than 115,000 metric tons of nitrates flowed down the Mississippi River into the Gulf of Mexico. There they threatened a diverse ecosystem far removed from the flatlands of the Central Delta.
My grandmother's people were some of the first settlers in this area, and really before it was Indianola, I think they called it Sunflower. It was just a small family farm, and it, at that point, was a lot of cows and some row crop. Over the years, my father and farm labor did a lot of the clearing of the land. He did kind of the original landforming job on a lot of the fields so that he could irrigate. That's been kind of one of the biggest changes, is getting everything land leveled and then precision land leveled. All of this land is precision land leveled.
Hello, I'm Jimmy Sandifer from Belzona, Mississippi, and we farm here corn and soybeans. We have operations for wildlife and conservation. We've been farming all our lives, so that's what we've been doing.
It's a low margin business in the best of times, and when the markets are really low or the weather is really bad, it's a no margin business.
I can say it's not easy in these times are so hard, but it's always been like that. You know, my great uncle farmed, my dad farmed, and I mean, I've heard about these times, so that's why you always try to be prepared. So your your unit sits down on the road.
There's not a producer out there who's not really focused on managing soil, managing water, and all of those elements combined to produce a crop every year. What's important to consider is that a production system and the management thereof is really different for every producer, and that's different based on the resources that are available to them, whether that's financial resources and capital investment, time, equipment, labor, things that all are integral to the production system, and a lot of times those are limiting. Right now, for a producer who also needs to be an engineer and a broker and really innovative in so many ways, making a profit can be tricky, and input costs are really high.
So it's a complicated picture, but one answer just might be simpler than you'd expect. We'll have more on that a little later in the show.
Next up, a Southern Gardening double feature. First up, we head to South Mississippi for a look at a versatile plant that's also resilient and yet delicate at the same time. Here's Eddie with that.
Today, Southern Gardening is back at the MSU South Mississippi Branch Experiment Station. They have some gorgeous Angelonia plants growing in their gardens. Let's take a look at some of these plants. The Angelonia Angel Face series is a group of ornamental plants known for their vibrant, snapdragon-like flowers and versatility in gardens and landscapes. Angel Face Wedgwood Pink has flowers that are celebrated for their delicate, soft pink and white hues. Angel Face Perfectly Pink is another variety with pink flowers within the Angel Face series. It is known for its vivid pink flowers that are slightly larger than those of other Angelonia varieties. The blooms have a classic snapdragon-like shape, and their bright, saturated pink color makes them a striking addition to the landscape. Angel Face White and Angel Face Blue are two other varieties in the Angel Face series. Each variety has flowers adorned with a subtle eye in the center, adding an elegant touch to their overall look. The flowers are abundant and large, creating a striking display against the backdrop of glossy, dark green, lance-shaped leaves. This contrast between the colored blooms and the rich green foliage adds depth and visual interest to the garden setting. Angel Face Angelonia flowers are not only beautiful, but also resilient, thriving in full sun and displaying a prolific blooming habit throughout the growing season. If you are ever in Poplarville, Mississippi, you should stop by the MSU South Mississippi Branch Experiment Station to see their display gardens. I'm Eddie Smith, and I will see you next time on Southern Gardening.
On the flip side of our double feature, a moss garden can be a different way to beautify your landscape. Here's Eddie again.
A moss garden can make a great place to relax and cool off from this summer heat. Today, Southern Gardening is at the home of Jack and Nadine in Petal, Mississippi, sharing with you their enchanting moss garden. As you enter the moss garden, you are greeted with a cute moss garden sign and one of the many ant sculptures located throughout the gardens. The ant sculptures add a whimsical feel to the moss garden area. The dense green moss covering the ground looks like a thick green carpet. Umbrella palms around the garden add to the enchanted atmosphere. The bracts of the umbrella palms, sometimes referred to as leaves, resemble the spokes of an umbrella. Begonias and impatiens add a pop of color to the garden. A rustic and unique swing provides the perfect place to sit, relax, and enjoy the beautiful garden. Right now, Mother Nature has provided bright yellow-orange colored mushrooms popping up through the moss. They definitely catch your eye with their bright color. An old fabric rug covered in moss defines a nice seating area to unwind and enjoy a refreshing beverage. A variegated cast iron plant in a beautiful ceramic pot is at the entrance to the seating area. Its dark green leaves with yellowish white speckles really stand out. The pink begonias in colorful ceramic pots also brighten up the seating area. Consider adding a moss garden to a shady area of your landscape. It will provide a great place to relax and cool off from the summer heat. I'm Eddie Smith, and I will see you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a break right here, but don't go away. Coming up in our Farm Week feature, more of our special report, Balancing Act. We go deeper into Dr. Jason Hoeksema's collaborative research project along the Sunflower River in the Mississippi Delta. It's a unique way of looking at stewardship, and it's a dialogue between scientists and farmers who are all concerned about water quality and soil. More of Balancing Act, that's coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believe that education, of which extension work is an essential part, is basic in stimulating individual initiative, self-determination, and leadership. I believe that these are the keys to democracy, and that people, when given facts they understand, will act not only in their self-interest, but also in the interest of society. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance towards the views of others. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations, and their faith. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance toward the views of others. I believe that education is a lifelong process, and the greatest university is the home. That my success as a teacher is proportional to those qualities of mind and spirit that give me welcome entrance to the homes of the families I serve. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
In the markets this week, a special report on an important commodity that affects our everyday lives, wheat. It's a crop that's been important for a long time, has quite a history, and is used in many, many goods. But what is it that makes wheat such a fascinating plant?
It's one of the most recognizable crops in the world, commonly seen as waves of golden color across vast open fields. Wheat. A staple food for thousands of years and used in many products. But what exactly is this special plant? What exactly is wheat? According to Encyclopedia Britannica, wheat is one of the oldest and most important of the cereal crops. Of the many varieties known, the most important are common wheat used to make bread, durum wheat used in making pasta, and club wheat, a softer type also used for baking flours. As a plant, wheat is a type of grass, just like corn, and like its cousin, it's cultivated to produce grains, also known as kernels, that are then eaten. However, unlike corn, the grain is mostly consumed by people, with only a small percentage going towards animal feed or other uses. There are 6 main types of wheat grown commercially across the world: soft red winter, hard red winter, hard red spring, hard white, soft white, and durum. As the name implies, winter wheats are planted around October to January and are harvested around May to August, while spring wheat is planted around March and April and harvested around July to September. Like other plants, wheat has several growth stages agronomists use to identify its life cycle: emergence, when the main stem rises from the seed; tillering, when secondary stems form; stem extension, when the plant begins to grow upwards; booting and head development, when the grain heads form; flowering and grain filling, when the wheat begins to pollinate; and ripening and maturation, when the grain becomes what we know as wheat kernels. The wheat plant contains both male and female reproductive parts, which means it's able to pollinate itself. However, it does much better in groups. Not to mention, having more than one plant means more grain to harvest. Winter wheat does something interesting in its growing seasons. During the coldest months, it goes into a type of dormancy. That is, it grows much more slowly to compensate for the harsh climate. But once spring approaches, it bounces back. Even more interesting is that winter wheat varieties require freezing temperatures to activate their reproductive cycle. In other words, without the freeze, they can't make grain. In the U.S., hard red and soft red winter wheat produce more bushels per year than their spring counterparts. Like most crops, there are challenges producers face, including weather, disease, and insects. The greatest challenges tend to happen when the plant is young and most at risk to insect predation and weeds hogging the soil's nutrients. The greatest ongoing threat, however, is the weather, as drought can greatly hurt the growing and grain production of the plant. On a global scale, wheat is about 20% of the world's daily protein. The largest exporters are Russia, the U.S., Canada, France, and Ukraine. The largest importers are typically Egypt, Indonesia, Turkey, and the Philippines. China also produces a large quantity of wheat per year. In America, wheat is measured in bushels. Globally, it's measured in tons. Roughly 1 bushel of wheat weighs about 60 pounds, contains about 1 million kernels, and can produce about 42 pounds of white flour. Although foodstuffs are the main use of wheat, it has other uses as well. The straw and the chaff, which is the discarded husk surrounding the kernel, can be used to make bioplastics, paper, particle board, and industrial absorbents. The kernels can be used to create ethanol, a biofuel. The middling, a byproduct of flour milling, is used as animal feed. So, what are the greatest driving factors concerning wheat prices? Well, there's emerging markets due to population increases that makes the demand for wheat higher. There's the weather, which can determine the international supply. Subsidies, specifically for ethanol, which is made mostly from corn, affect the amount of wheat acres grown and therefore the supply. The value of the dollar and governmental actions such as import duties and taxes, which affect the buying price. Overall, wheat is a fascinating plant with a long history of feeding the human race. We've cultivated it for thousands of years and use it every day for staple food products. It's been a valuable and dependable commodity, and there's no sign of that slowing down anytime soon.
Now back to Balancing Act, our special report. Earlier, we met the key players in the Mississippi Delta, where a unique research project was born. Now we go deeper, picking up with Mike asking a key question that's the basis of the project itself.
Agricultural profitability can often be a game of inches. Every square foot matters to farmers trying to make a living. But it's a balancing act. Every acre of Delta land in production is an acre that's not available for conservation and wildlife. But what if there was a way to maintain fields for ag use while providing valuable wetlands and reducing erosion through the non-growing season? Dr. Jason Hoeksema and a team of state and federal researchers are looking into how one simple change might make a world of difference.
Mississippi Delta farmers and farms are really important for efforts to feed the world. Not only our part of the world, but the corn and soybeans and other products that come from the Mississippi Delta feed big parts of our country and other parts of the world. The way that agriculture has been practiced traditionally in the Mississippi Delta, there are some potential downstream consequences of it that we should be concerned about.
Well, the only way to ensure maximum yields on a farm is to fertilize. There's quite a bit of nitrogen put on the landscape globally to maintain the yields needed to feed a growing global population.
When it rains, just by the nature of there being more fertilizer on the landscape, the rain can transport that to aquatic systems. And I think one of the main concerns there is the development of algal blooms.
And that has been shown to contribute to the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, which has consequences not only for wildlife and ecosystems, but for people as well.
Being a farmer, it's always been about balance because nature's in charge a lot, and runoff and the wildlife, it works together. It's always worked together for me.
I mean, you've got to take care of your place. You've got to take care of your land. I mean, it's just like your fertility. You've got to spend money to put into it so that it will be productive. Stewardship is primarily about self-preservation, but the offshoot of that is it's also good for the broader world and the broader environment. If I can keep my soil in Sunflower County and not send it down to New Orleans, everybody's happier.
But oftentimes conversations about agriculture production and conservation can be in conflict with each other, and the reality is that what's happening on the landscape is an integrated system. And so it's putting these pieces together. So we look at the landscape a little bit differently, the role of soil function beyond crop production, as well as the other ecosystem services it can provide.
Everybody's concerned with, water quality and soil quality. And that's what makes a farm. Without that, we're not, if we don't take care of it, we're not gonna be able to keep growing these crops.
Keeping fertilizers and other nutrients on the land where they are placed is key to reducing river runoff downstream. Dr. Hoeksema's project along the Sunflower River encourages farmers to temporarily flood their fields at the end of the growing season. These temporary wetlands serve as a barrier to runoff, retaining the soil during the rainy off-season while also promoting beneficial microbial activity. The project is a way to understand just how beneficial these wetlands may be for both the land and for the birds that use the Delta as a stopover on their long trek south for the winter.
Literally millions of migratory birds pass through the Mississippi Delta every year. The Delta is potentially a really valuable stopover site for a lot of those birds to refuel. So the Sunflower River Project, its goal is to explore how, basically what happens when we create temporary wetlands on crop fields. So we work with farmers to find a way to put water back out onto the crop fields after the crop harvest in the fall, to do that in a way that doesn't interfere too much with farm operations, but also in a way that may help migratory water birds.
This is our second year in the project, and they're really doing some studies for how the flooding that we're doing for the shorebirds is, interconnected with crop yields.
The reason we focused on the Sunflower River Basin is because there's been a lot of work in that region to develop infrastructure on farms called tailwater recovery systems, which is a series of leveling of fields and berms and ditches that allow the farmers to capture water that runs off those fields, pump it into an on-site reservoir, and reuse it. We were already grappling with the problem of how to get farmers interested in potentially, making this habitat for birds. The fact that it could have additional benefits, not only for the environment, but even for farms and farmers, it hadn't dawned on me, and it was very exciting because it made it seem like this could really happen on a larger scale.
A unique project, to say the least. Well, next week, more about the implications of the project.
We'll conclude our special report and we'll learn more about how the flooding is coordinated and then how the bird habitat is analyzed afterward. We'll discover that for all the benefits of the project, there's a cost. And there's the inevitable rush to analyze the pros and cons during a race against time before the next season's planting begins.
The conclusion of Balancing Act, next time on Farm Week.
Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. See you next week. Thanks for watching.